Welcome to Paranormal Heart Podcast with host Kat Ward. Hello again. Welcome, my friends, to Paranormal Heart Podcast, Paranormal Talk with Heart and Soul. Tonight's segment is pre-recorded, streaming on United Public Radio Network, 107.7 New Orleans, and 105.3 the Gulf Coast, YouTube, and any place you find your favorite podcast. You already know I'm Kat Ward. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. So before I bring on tonight's guest, I want to give a special shout out to Heidi and her sweet granddaughter, Audrey Marie. They listen to the show together, and that just warms my heart. So thank you so much, both of you, for your love and support. It truly means the world to me. So, folks, can you believe it? We've made it to segment 50 on the network, UPRN. And to celebrate, I couldn't think of two better people to join me than my dear friends and returning guests, Ann Selene and Ron Crypto Guru Murphy. Tonight, we're diving into a really fascinating topic, the connection between psychology and the paranormal. So please help me welcome Ann and Ron. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Yeah, you are indeed one of our favorite people as well, too.
Well,
and it's
you.
an honor to be here. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yes,
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited. What an honor it is to be back.
Oh,
But-
the honor's mine.
And I'm not surprised about your longevity either. You have a very cool little talk show here, and I learn something every time I tune in.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Yes, congratulations on 50. That's great.
Thank you. As everyone else knows, I can't remember what the actual episodes are because I went by episode, and then since joining the network last year, I think it was October, I now have 50 under my belt, so it's 200 at least in total, and it'll be 8 years that I have this little podcast. It'll be at the end of November. Will be 8 years.
Wow.
That's
That's
incredible.
Yeah.
That's an
Good for
achievement.
you.
Cool.
Thank
And you
you.
also have a very loyal following as well, too. That's the reason, I like to be on your show, and I like to be on Dave Scott's show, is because you have
Dave's
your
awesome.
own entourage that comes with you. And they always ask great questions and everything. So,
Yep.
so yeah, that says something about the love that people have for you out there, Kat.
Thank you, Ron.
Mm.
Yeah, I get a lot more interaction and more questions when the episode is live, obviously. But pre-records, I still have people commenting. They send me messages. So, I'm just so happy that people are still listening.
Well, heavens, yeah. And there's something like, so Ann and I, we recently just did a conference together a couple of weeks ago. And, there is a need for these kind of forums. People have tales to tell, and this is kind of like a catharsis. There's a lot of people out there that experience things that they cannot explain. And to have a safe space, which your show certainly is, to come on in here and talk about what they've experienced is, one of the best feelings in the world. So, I'm happy to be here as a facilitator, which basically we all are. And I think that when we get into everything, we can see how interconnected everybody is. When we connect the proverbial dots of the paranormal.
Yeah, like I've said so many times that the paranormal, the thing that really intrigues me and fascinates me is no matter where you are in the world, it doesn't matter if you're rich, you're poor, the color of your skin, what religion you are, everyone's having these paranormal encounters that they just can't explain. So it brings us together as a people.
It really does.
Oh,
It's a beautiful healing. Yeah.
Yes. And I find back in the day, you guys probably remember this, there was so much drama when it came to the paranormal. Your research was BS, I don't believe you. You're crazy. You didn't experience this. But people have gotten together and we decided we're going to say no to the bullies and we're going to give us, again, I hate the term para-unity, but that's what it is. Everyone has united together to stand up and say, no, this is my research. These are my guests, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah, for the most part, there are still going to be factions out there.
Yes,
and there are
always
going to
will.
still be. That's right. But I think that's kind of falling along the wayside. There's a lot of people out here that like to pretend that they're experts in a field that's kind of marginalized at best, and that's okay. I have no problem with that. It's just whenever they're trying to influence people to see things their way. And like you had said, they use these kind of schoolyard tactics where they're kind of the bully. And if you don't go by their rules, they won't have you talk at their events and such. And we do need para-unity, absolutely. And I think this is one of those great big leaps forward in the world of the para-unity on your show.
Definitely. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I couldn't agree more.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
And over the years, I've met amazing people such as you two. I mean, I would say 99% of the time, whenever I have a guest on, it's not just we're recording, that's it. Here's the link to the release. I actually have formed friendships over the internet, like with people like you. I mean, it's so amazing.
Well, it's incredible because I'll never forget the first time that I was ever on a podcast. This was back in 2015 or 16. And when I went on there and the response that I got, people saying, "Oh my gosh, I've experienced this as well." And then, you know, the friendships that formed from there, it was a very healing and validating experience to have them, you know, confirm what I experienced, but then I also was confirming their experience. And then you have that kind of bond and healing that comes from that. And then it just, you know, that trickles into the community. And I absolutely love that. I want to be a part of that as much as I can.
And if it was not for you, Kat, I would never have met Ann. Actually, when we were going to do, that's a true story. Whenever I was going to do the Paris, Tennessee Dogman Festival, you got in touch with me and you said, Ann's going to be down there. Be sure to say hello to her for me, and she's a great person. And that was really our introduction was through Kat.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah. I knew you two would connect, and look at you guys now. Oh my God, doing things together. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, she's become my best friend. And that's a, you know, like we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of people out there in the field that really can't be trusted. But I have met so many genuine people. And for the most part, my experience in the world of the supernatural and the paranormal has been very positive. Now, that's not to say that I've lost friends, which I indeed have. But I think for the most part, my experiences has so far been very positive and beneficial. And I cannot wait to see where the future leads us.
Oh, me too.
Well, I think if you remain true to yourself, the people that shouldn't be in your life will just kind of like dwindle. But the people that should be in your life, you're going to connect.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Sad when you lose friends, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
So, you crazy cats, psychology and the paranormal. This is very fascinating to me, and I can't wait to see what you two will teach us. Before we do that, can you both give us just a little bit about yourselves and how you got into the paranormal, like your humble beginnings, I guess?
Oh my gosh. Well, mine was through a podcast. I was actually homeschooling. And I was teaching the children about the evolution of entertainment as well as like electricity. So we were talking about, you know, because I grew up listening to Howdy Doody and Rin Tin Tin on the cassette tapes. I was so excited. So I tried to find some of that stuff on the laptop, you know, to have my kids listen to it. And I was like, oh, I wonder if there's anything like that exists today. And enter the world of podcasts. So then I'm searching and I'm like, oh man, there's a Bigfoot one, there's a paranormal one. And so then I found them on Facebook and I'm following them. And then all of a sudden it opens up to me being able to call in and tell my story. And I did that. And it was life changing. And afterwards, I ended up it was called the Acrylic Ranch in the beginning, but that transitioned into the Caravan Library of Lore. And I really started that because the experience that I had when I was the guest, I wanted to facilitate that for others because I saw for me in my life how healing that was. And I was like, oh, I want to give that platform to other people. Mm-hmm. I want to, you know, so that's really where I began. I was a lifelong experiencer. And so it was just absolutely incredible to find this family.
Oh, my dear sweet child, Anne. Before podcast, I remember something called the radio, and that was podcast back in the day before the
Yeah.
computer. And here in Western Pennsylvania, we would have the grandfather of the paranormal, good old Stan Gordon, come on a couple times a month from KDKA outside of Pittsburgh and talk about Bigfoot and UFO sightings. And my area, my little hometown of Blairsville, Pennsylvania, of roughly 3,500 people. Back in the day, I think it had 2 streetlights. Now I think it has 3. But back in the day, we were just a little, out in the middle of nowhere kind of place. And all of a sudden, Bigfoot was being reported around, our neighborhood, and like news crews were coming in from the city. It was that kind of big thing. It was sensational. It was as if a Hollywood star was filming a movie down there. Because one of the first images I can remember seeing is this black and white creature in the Patterson Gimlin film moving across my floor model television set. Now, Ann, I'm gonna tell you what that is. So at one time, people had these television sets that were supposed to be like furniture as well too. So you have a screen in there, not very large, and so you could like put like buffets up on top of it. I don't know what it was used for. I know our cat used to sleep up on top of it, but
Yep.
but yeah, it weighed like 300 pounds, and they had like tubes in it. They had the television tubes. But the thing is, inevitably the channel turner would always fall off. So you'd have to get a pair of pliers and turn it.
Yes. Oh my God.
That's right. So one of the first images I ever saw on the television that I can remember, the Patterson Gimlin came out about 2 or 3 years before I was born. So I was a wee pup whenever I was watching this. And I just assumed, watching, Wild Kingdom and all this kind of stuff, that this was true to nature, right? This was a picture, a moving picture of something that was out there that was unexplained. So in my fertile imagination, as I'm developing, my personality, I was so intrigued by these tales that my mother would tell of the paranormal and, sitting around listening to radio shows, podcasts back in the 70s, and just going out with her looking for these things was so cherished memories to me that I now take my children and my grandchildren out because it fosters within you imagination, which is slowly dwindling away. And I guess that kind of leads to a good point, because so much of this relies on your perception of things, right? Your experience, my experience, Ann's experience is all different because it comes from our point of view. And our point of views are informed by all kinds of things, our religious background, our education, the way we see the world around us. So I think this is a good starting point, because as we were growing up in a world that was imbued with the supernatural, it was also translated through our eyesight and processed through our brain to be something that was entirely personal to each and every one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's incredible. When you have a background in belief with, UFOs, paranormal and everything, it can really, like, for me, in my experience, it was a blessing that I was able to have these experiences and then go to my parents and not be just, shoved off and, oh, there's no such thing as this. I was able to really have a lot of support. However, I was able to learn. So there's been a couple books that I've come across as I've gotten older. One of them is called The Body Keeps the Score. And it teaches a lot about trauma therapy and how, we can have somatic situations where, from one situation that I had when I was a child, I always felt something in my lower back. I had this strange experience that I thought was more of an alien being that was kind of going around my bed. And I thought it was maybe an abduction dream. But it seemed more like a reality, because in my body, I could still feel something in my lower back, and it always stayed with me. And that made me think, okay, this is something real. But for some reason, I never really talked about that. That was one experience that I was just very unsure of. It didn't make it into my book. I haven't really talked about, on podcasts or anything. And through the therapy that I've done, because I do believe, I don't think that you have to have something wrong with you to go to therapy. I think that if you go to therapy, it can be very helpful to dive deeper within yourself and cultivate a closer relationship with yourself and work on self-love. Because as we heal that part of ourselves and we have a good relationship with ourselves, we're going to have better relationships with everybody in our lives. So as I went through this journey, I realized how incredibly intricate our brains are in regards to putting puzzle pieces together. Mm-hmm. Our brains are desperate to build a story. So if something happens to you and you have a lot of cortisol running through your brain, it's going to hit this memory center, and it's going to cause misremembrance. It's going to cause false memories. It's going to cause amnesia, different things depending on what happened and your personal makeup. But through this journey, I realized that this experience was my brain dealing with a trauma that actually happened, a real world human trauma. But my 6-year-old brain thought it would be easier and be able to deal with the trauma better to think, oh, it was an alien abduction. Because then it's something that's outside of you. It's something that it's easier to deal with than looking the actual person in the face and going, oh no, this is what happened. And so, but that's not to say that that's every single situation. That's just one of the, possibilities that we do have to look down as we're, traveling this path.
Yeah, I think and by extension, the other thing that Ann and I like to investigate and focus on is trauma that is part of humanity itself, cultural trauma, folk memories, that we all have this kind of shared trauma from somewhere in history, which is very Jungian as well, too, this idea of a collective unconscious, that's something so... I guess the word would be not so much terrifying, but we encountered something in our deep past that made us fear things that go bump in the night, right? And all this stuff can't really be imagined. So I come from the focal point that something happened in our deep past that we did encounter monsters of some kind, whatever, whether it be, relic human beings for the wild man mythos, or cannibal tribes that related to vampire and werewolf myths. But I am convinced through all my research that we as human beings encountered things, and these have become our collective nightmares. These have become the archetypes, which is all over the world, right? Nearly every culture around the world has the idea of a wild man, or the vampire, some sort of undead creature that would come and feed off of the living. This is just a part of humanity. So why in 2025 do we still need these? And I think that it's just part of our DNA. It's really embroidered into our DNA because of what we encountered in the past. And if you look at the teachings of Piaget, even though this applies to young children, I look at humanity in its infancy in a way, right? Just whenever we were starting to learn how to walk and become, civilized in a way, we were brought up against obstacles, and how we overcome these obstacles is what shapes us for the rest of our lives. So through the rest of our days as humans. And I think there was a need in our collective memory to not identify human beings as these heinous monsters, which we are capable of being. Oh, yes. So we have now projected onto the canvas of humanity these monsters. And like a Scooby-Doo cartoon, inevitably at the end of this mystery that we encounter, once we take off the mask, it usually, unfortunately, is a human being underneath there. We have went through wars in which we've done, we've brought hell to earth. We've been through things that human beings shouldn't do. But then, if you look back, Ann and I were researching about famous werewolf cases, and there was a man back in Germany, and this was, I believe, in the 1500s, that he would abduct children and kill them, and the next day he would be out helping the parents searching for the child that he killed. And he would abduct pregnant women and kill them and eat the fetus. And all of this time, it was a human being, but everything that he was doing seemed so monstrous that the community thought it had to be a werewolf because a human being couldn't do this. And talking about the psychology of the werewolf or of the monster as well, many times whenever these people were brought to trial, they also did not want to admit that they were capable of doing such things. Mm-hmm. So it was usually an alibi of the devil made me do it, right? There was some sort of demonic influence going on, because what people are capable of doing is so against everything, every part of our conscience, that it has to be a monster in the end. And that is part of a psychology. That's what happened to Ann. This trauma, this collective universal trauma, has made us by default have to create monsters because we don't want to believe that our neighbor could do such things.
Right. Well, and it's interesting too, and I'd like to get your take on this. If we look at it as archetypes, monstrous archetypes, right? If you have the vampire, at least nowadays, that is like, sin and lust, that part of our shadow self. The Sasquatch could be that wild part of ourselves that wants to be, not part of society and broken free from all that. But then you have the werewolf, which is this murderous type, but vampires were not always in the lustful sexual way. So what would their need have been, their connection in the beginning?
Well, I think, not to toot my own horn, but toot. So I tried to look in the archaeological record and find out exactly what's the earliest we could go back to and say, this may have sparked something, right? So shortly after the last ice age, there is a cave over in England, the Cheddar Gorge Cave. It's where cheddar cheese comes from, right? So there's a cave over there that has animal remains in it, a lot of animal remains. It was a processing station where these people would use the cave as a shelter, and they would go out and hunt, and they'd bring back the animals, and they would process them. Now, what's interesting, in this Goes Cave, it's its proper name, and it goes down about 300 feet underground, so it's an immense labyrinth type of situation. But in those bones that they found of reindeer and bison and horses and all this kind of stuff were 3 human beings as well. 2 that were probably in their adolescence, and 1 child, which shows that these people were feeding on other people. Now, at this particular time in England, archaeologists call it the time of the it was the land of the living dead, because there was more people dying than were being born. This was not a good situation. Yeah. So in order to survive, you had to eat what you could find, right? So that's what was going on. Now, what makes it vampiric is that we know that there was the drinking of blood in this place, because there was 2 skulls that were found that were fashioned in the goblet, and there was blood residue found in there. So we knew that they were taking in blood as well. But blood has very little nutritional content to it. It can actually act almost as a poison as well. So I think what was going on in this cave was a desperate measure. This was just, like at a time whenever, there was times in the Middle Ages that castles were under siege and dogs and cats and vermin were eaten because people will do anything to stay alive, right? So imagine if you would, we'll go back, 14,000 years, and we are in a barren landscape in England, and as soon as night falls, these other people come up out of caves. This is where bats dwell, and caves are where we bury our dead, right? So they're coming up out of the earth to prey upon us. And I truly think that this is where the legend of the vampire originated, not so much in this particular location, but I'm sure if it happened in England, it was happening all over the world. Well,
Right.
You flipped.
Well, yeah, something happened. Okay.
He's trying to
there it goes. It was vampire. But then no, my phone. It said I should restart my service or whatever. So I just said no. The hell with that. But so I'm sure it was happening all over the world like this because, as I said before, all over the world are these myths of these creatures, and if you look at it closely. Vampires were always known to prey upon children. That's a common factor throughout the whole world. And if you look at Go's Cave, these were young people that were being preyed upon because they're simply easy to catch. A child's not going to fight back. So I think that is really one of these crucial points in our evolutionary development that we had to hold on one thing. My phone's just going nuts. That we had to encounter such things, and we didn't want to admit that human beings were able to do such things, so we made them into monsters.
Totally agree. Yeah, I mean, to be able to create all these monsters, and it's really a reflection of what humanity can be that we don't want to admit that we can be.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess, even if you look at Nazi Germany during World War II, you had a lot of allusions to things like wolves and wolves. So they even wanted to take the humanity out of it as well, too, and cast it almost in Viking language, this kind of berserker type of attitude, because it's very hard to do things to your fellow man unless you believe that you are something other than them as well.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And this is so, if I can segue here for a second.
Sure.
When we create these monsters and we put all of this stuff off on something other, something outside, this is also what makes it so hard in our field, because for an example, when you have, we're out at night, let's say, and we're walking through the woods. Well, let's say we believe in Sasquatch. Maybe we're out there searching for him. And then all of a sudden we see something. It's off in the distance. And we're like, oh, is that him? And you see the shape, and he kind of, maybe he's there, but then he kind of goes away, and then maybe it's back and it's over in a different area. And this is also what I think could go towards people thinking that Sasquatch is on the woo side of things, because he appears and then he disappears. But there is something that I learned about called night myopia. So this is, we become nearsighted, humans do, at night. Our brains, are also filling in the gap. So we can't really see, and we're trying to make out these shapes. And then our brain is going to connect the dot, put in those puzzle pieces. It's a Sasquatch. And then now you're seeing the shape of it. However, it's really, really hard for people if you tell that to them. And I'm not saying that is the case for every encounter. I'm saying that this is another avenue to explore. But there are going to be the people that say, no, I know what I saw, because it's really hard to come to that conclusion. I have to wear glasses. I didn't want to start wearing glasses. And it was just, oh man, is my body actually changing like this? Is this something that I'm going to have to do for the rest of my life? It's really hard for us to realize the changes that we go through, or if we do something that isn't out of love or the best, if we make a mistake, it can be almost impossible for some people to actually admit the mistake. Some people never do. Yep. So that's where this starts to get really difficult, I think, for us with, being the receivers and receiving reports.
But also we have to point out too, the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot phenomenon, we were also talking about something that's in the shape of a man as well, right? So we still have this humanity to it, even though it's monstrous. It's still in our shape and our form, which makes it even more terrifying, And I think that what has happened is because so many cultures around the world have this as their archetype, it has become deified in many cultures, especially in the East. The Yeti is not wholly physical. It has two very particular substances, one very subtle, and then the physicality of it as well, too. So, too, with First Nations and Native American groups. Not every single one, but most of them have this element where it straddles two different realities, the very vulgar, mundane world, and then the supernatural, divine world as well. And so where does that come from? How does this thing transcend time and space? And it goes back to the idea, again, that somewhere in our deep past that we encountered, whether it be a relic population of Neanderthal or Australopithecus or something, but somewhere along the line we encountered something that informed our mythology and even our religion. A lot of people, you watch any podcast, are going to talk about Nephilim and how this ties into the idea of giants and Bigfoot as well too. That these images keep on creeping up over and over again, and it really is my opinion that it was because we were dealing with other hominins, or we were dealing with hominins at the time that we were struggling to be civilized hominoids.
Right,
folks. I just want to throw out here that Ron and Ann and I are not trying to say that any paranormal encounter that you've had is just psychological. It's not there. Your mind is just trying to fill in the blanks. That's not the case, because there are real cases of people happening. This is just trying to look at the psychology part of the paranormal. So I just want to throw that out there.
Right. Oh, no, yeah. I appreciate that. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
We both experienced things we cannot explain, right? Mm-hmm. We cannot explain at all. So this is kind of like an overview, kind of like a Cliff Notes version of how this could work. But absolutely, the reason why we're still going on and still looking for these things is because there is so much anecdotal evidence out there of something going on. That's what keeps us diving deeper and deeper.
Right. So, and here's the thing too. I have had so many experiences, and I remember when I got into the field and I was like, I've had this experience and this experience, with a Sasquatch, with a haunting, a shadow figure, a, UFO, you name it. And I remember people criticizing me and saying, oh, it can't be real if you've had all these experiences, and I get that. And of course, then I thought that I was the perfect case study for me to figure out and dive into all these different things that I've experienced. And what a better way to get closer to the truth than to realize and to figure out, okay, so if this one was psychological, if this one was real world, does this one fit into the real world category? And if it doesn't, oh my gosh, am I closer now? Can I figure out oh my gosh, this is a real one? And then it makes it, to me, it's so much more exciting. And it's so much more like, oh, I'm onto something. And then to be able to pick out those differences. And so I think that this dialogue is really, really important, especially if we want to take this field as a healing field, which I really think it is. Mm-hmm. And if we find out, right, if we have an experience and we do find out that it's psychological, it doesn't negate or take away from or change what happened in your life because of that experience. We've made friendships, we've gone on a journey, and maybe it's transformed us in some way. All of that is completely real, no matter what the story is behind the experience.
Yeah, perfectly said. Because even if you're having an experience, whether it would be ghostly or, an encounter with a cryptid or whatever, at the end of the day, it is still psychological, because I can't say to you, here's my experience, take a look at it, because it's my personal experience. It resides in my mind. And as time goes by, it's going to change, it's going to ebb, it's going to flow, and ultimately it might morph into something completely different. So even though we're not putting down every single encounter, because some encounters indeed are genuine, but it always is going to have a psychological component because it's personal to the person seeing it.
I also feel that if you're researching any aspect of the paranormal, you have to think outside of the box too. So you have to add psychology to it just to see if there's correlations, bring up those tough discussions too, because maybe someone is going through a psychological, what's the word I'm looking for?
Crisis or...
Thank you. Yeah. And maybe that crisis has brought paranormal activity to that individual because of that, or vice versa. We don't know. So we have to broaden our research and look into every aspect. At least that's what I feel.
See,
absolutely.
Exactly. And of course, I don't remember the percentage. Maybe you guys know it, but we only use a teeny tiny percentage of our brain, whatever that is, but it's small. And so when we look at the psychology and when we start to get into the topics such as manifestation, right, we realize how powerful our minds are, how important it is to learn all these different things. I mean, when I realized, gosh, it's so hard for me because I'm so excited now and there's all these different things. So, okay, so I'll start off with saying, when we look at remote viewing, I believe that this is something that we all can do. I don't think that anybody's special. I think that it is a muscle that we can work out, no different than our arms or our legs. And when we do that, and I think we're, because if everything is made up of energy, we're tapping into that. And so if our thoughts and everything in the world is made up of energy, then the more thought we put into something, the stronger of a magnet it is. So then we're pulling it to us. And this is how I believe that manifestation works. And this can work in regards to, and this is the hard part though too, there's a gray area here, because either A, we can manifest a paranormal experience, right? Draw one to us and it could be genuine. Or we can manifest a psychological situation that makes us believe that it was paranormal. No matter what, though, the outcome is the same, whether it was real or not. And that outcome can be, healing, growing, transformative, whatever. But yeah, if we could jump into the power of manifestation, that's huge as well here.
It is, yes.
Yeah, one of my favorite cases in the UFO world, and I was really terrified by this since I've been a kid, was the Barney and Betty Hill case up there in New Hampshire. This was a white woman who was married to a black man, and they were involved very much in the NAACP and everything. And this is early, right? This is the early '60s. So this is a time whenever this still isn't so prevalent, and really in parts of the United States even illegal. So we have a tale about these people coming back from vacation in Canada, and as they're heading on home, they see these lights, right? They see these lights, and then they have missing time. And it's not until they go through this psychological journey, this hypnosis and everything, before they start claiming that they were abducted by aliens. And the wife, Betty Hill, said there was sexual tests done. There was always this idea of sexuality involved in this as well too. So one of my theories that Ann actually opened me up to this, and she'll be able to fill you in because she does it so eloquently, about the eye movement. What is that? What is that called?
Oh, okay. So this is EMDR. It's
Yeah.
eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
There
And
you go.
yeah,
There you
it's
go.
so quick. It's absolutely incredible because the way that it rewires your brain, so you can close your eyes and tap back and forth with your hands, or somebody will go like this and your eyes will go back and forth,
Mhm.
and it causes the neurons and everything to cross, and it'll actually regrow the hypothalamus. So when you're a child, if you have preverbal trauma or trauma before the age of 8, your hypothalamus will actually stop progressing its growth, and and that also affects your cortisol production. So then later on in life, if you go to a therapist and you're doing the EMDR, you can actually start to see a physical change in the hypothalamus, and then your nervous system starts to regulate, and the production of cortisol also lessens. Okay.
No, I think because I think it's
Wow.
important
Yeah,
because she's awesome. So
she is.
many UFO encounters begin with lights, right? These lights that they see,
Yep.
and then
Oh,
is
last.
is it
Okay.
possible they suffered a traumatic encounter that they then kind of processed it as if it was something extraterrestrial? Because again, a back road at night, a white woman, a black man. She was saying that she was being, examined from a sexual standpoint. Is it possible that they ran into some people who did some very, very bad things to them?
Yeah.
And again, we have the idea of the lights and everything like that, and their brain just simply restructured this very traumatic event as being something that was extraterrestrial, because that was also part of the culture of the time as well. We had those like the Outer Limits and the Twilight Zone.
Yep.
So we knew, from a cultural standpoint, that there might be visitations from another planet. Because if you look at the very early um, recounting by Barney Hill of these aliens, initially, whenever they first started down this road of hypnosis, he said he didn't describe them as aliens. He described them as humans that were wearing scarves and even had a hat on. So I think what might have happened was a very traumatic experience that has become one of the famous cases in UFO research, that it might have been a very traumatic thing that happened, that they simply processed in their mind to be an alien encounter.
Yeah, the brain just can't cope with it, so it gives you something else to help you cope. I mean, I'm sure you guys know who Joe Montaldo is. He's been doing a lot of research just for a long time into alien abductions globally, and he has specific questions that he will ask them, and that will help him determine if it was an actual alien abduction or if it was governments or just humans abducting these people for whatever reason. And it's amazing.
Oh yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that there's a really good book. It's called How People Come to Believe That They Were Abducted by Aliens. And so this was another book that I read alongside of The Body Keeps the Score. And it was very powerful. So that's just a suggestion.
Yeah. And also Carl Sagan. Yeah, Carl Sagan stated too, if there is an advanced civilization that is able to, cross time and space to get to us, they would only have to abduct one human being and get everything in that genome sequence and everything else from that one human being. So it's not necessary to keep on abducting people, but this was before we had the technology to do such things. Now that we have the technology to do such things, at least in my perception and from the cases that I encounter, less and less people are talking about alien encounters. Do you see that too, Dan, being the case?
Yes, there's been so many changes. We just don't receive any of the cases that we used to, and the cases that we do get don't become what they became in the past. There is something too that I wanted to point out recently. I've also come across somebody who did the research in regards to Bigfoot and UFO, and the very first connection, if you will, was done in a magazine. So it was in a UFO magazine, I believe it was, and then they mentioned Bigfoot. And then from there, boom, it took off. But there wasn't any reported cases of a connection between the two until it was in a publicated, magazine. And so then you kind of get into the hive mind and, that collective and how it just goes and it continues to go on. And so it's interesting to think about like, oh, well, what was the need for Bigfoot and aliens to merge? Why? Like, what does it serve the subconscious now to the people that are having those encounters now?
Yeah, it comes down to culture. It comes down to culture. So something happens in 1976. This is before Star Wars and just after Jaws. 1976, you have the premiere of The Bionic Man and Bigfoot. Do you remember that?
I love that show.
Yes. And there you have Bigfoot is not only an extraterrestrial, but he's a cyborg created by aliens. After that happened, it is now part of the cultural zeitgeist. And now everybody has that in their mind that this is a possibility. And people have been doing it ever since. I mean, there are camps out there right now that would die on the hill that Bigfoot is an extraterrestrial.
Yes,
yeah, that's true.
And I've always wondered, I mentioned not too long ago to someone growing up, listening about Bigfoot, you never heard about the woo side. It was just this creature that we're seeing. It's not doing anything extraordinary. It's just we're seeing these things. And all of a sudden, a few years ago, there's mind speak, it can cloak itself. There's all these other aspects of it. And it's like, when did that start and why? Like, is it just because more people are discussing more of their encounter and they're actually starting to maybe remember that, oh yeah, maybe this really did happen? Or is it like what you just said from a magazine?
Right. So another case that I was always scared about as well, too, a Bigfoot case, was the Eight Canyon case, right? Where these miners were attacked by these creatures,
Yeah.
But if you look at the original details of the case, it will blow your mind. So these guys were religious guys, right? And they said that they were led to this area in visions. And they were even like shown angelically where to go mining and things like that. So part of this was a religious context within their minds. And then whenever the creatures came, they saw them as demons. See, all this has been left out because we don't want to talk about these kind of things, right? We want to talk about the sensationalism that these miners were being attacked by Bigfoot creatures in California. But if you look at it deeper, they didn't even see it that way. They thought something else was going on as well, too. So even though it becomes part of our culture, there is still things that are being left out because nobody was writing about it, because it probably would not survive as a story if you started putting out these details as well.
Exactly. Anything to add to that, Ann?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I agree with it. It's one of those things where we love scary stories.
Yeah.
We thrive off of them. And
as a species, yeah, we absolutely love that.
Right. And so we're going to continue to have that, even if it's false. It's going to, it's going to endure, and it's just going to make it harder, to know the truth from, the false. But, I mean, I'm a writer. I love being able to evoke emotion. I love to be able to share stories with people. Yeah, it's so layered.
Yeah, but if we think again, we talked about at the onset of the show is that the at one time when we were not apex predators and we were pretty near the bottom of the food chain, the only thing that was keeping us alive is us gathering as a community around a fire, right? Because we're the only things on this earth that can create a fire. And we're also storytellers. We're verbal creatures. So I assure you that, tens of thousands, if not 100,000 years ago, people were huddled around this fire, and that glow was the only protection. And everything outside of that glow, this pitch darkness, were things waiting to eat us, humans and animals both. And that storytelling would have included these warnings, about boogeymen and everything else. So now we have, the electric light keeping us safe, and we have these walls that protect us. But, every now and then we still will close our blinds whenever we look out in that darkness, because something in us reminds us that the possibility exists that in those shadows something wants us.
Right.
And something's looking back at us.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. Oh, good point. So Friedrich Nietzsche said, the longer you stare into the abyss will then begin to stare back at you. But so many people forget before that as well, too. Right before that, he said, the monster hunter has to be wary that he does not become the monster. And that's very true, because as monster hunters, we don't want to become a monster, because, like I said, the longer we stare into that abyss, the more it stares back at us. And it doesn't really stare back at us. What it does is hold up a mirror to us. And in that mirror, we see our reflection. And everything monstrous, like Ann said earlier about this idea of shadow work, that touching those places in our being that we don't want to go. We know that human beings have all these kind of skeletons in our collective closet, right? And it's cannibalism, and it's killing other people, and it's war and all this other kind of stuff. And that has so been ingrained in our makeup that even now, when we are relatively safe here, that we still worry about things in the shadows.
And if I can flip the coin here as well. Okay, so
Absolutely.
When we, our stories, our memories were passed down verbally. And what has ended up happening as well. So this is another need for these monsters, if you will. So not only do we use them as scapegoats, but they're really important as reminders, because something that I like to talk about is the great forgetting. So we have fallen into this great forgetting where we have become separate. Like you said, now we're under this electric light. We're in these, hard structures, and we're separate from the forest. And now we're in our, man-made world. And what has happened is, it's affected our circadian rhythms. It's affected our connection to spirit, to earth, to all these different things. So when we're out there, I believe another reason why we might come across something like this is they appear to remind us of where we have come from, because we have forgotten. And I mean, when stories go and they're passed down from another person to another person, it also becomes a game of telephone. And so now we're so disconnected from the truth, from our roots. And I think that things such as, Bigfoot, regardless of what it is as well. So it could be a completely flesh and blood creature, which I think that it is. That's my camp on it. I think that there is something else out there that could be like a shapeshifter and take that on. But even if we cross paths with a flesh and blood Bigfoot, I think universe-wise, it was meant to happen, because then it's a reminder of where we've come from and how far, I
just want to mention too, what's that, Ron?
She's very good at this, isn't she?
Oh, she is. You both are. Yeah. I just want to mention Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde too. So, I mean, creating this monster that you don't want to admit that was a part of you. That's still the psychology part.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Yeah, it's like Frankenstein as well too.
Yeah. Yep.
That we gave birth to this thing, and it's a reflection of who we are, right? And instead of going after the creator, they always went after the poor monster.
Yeah.
Yeah. sometimes the monster's not what we think it is. It's just
absolutely. That's absolutely the case.
Yes, indeed. So we have a few more minutes. I can't believe this has gone by so fast already. So before we sign off, we still have about 3-4 minutes. But anyways, I'd like to for you two to mention to listeners where they can find you if they want to discuss further about this topic or anything in general about the paranormal.
So I have a website. It's ron-cryptoguru.com. So you can find all my books there, my link to everything. Or you can look me up on Amazon as well too. And social media, Ronald L. Murphy Jr. on Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And I like to hear from people. So if you wanna talk about something, if you don't agree about something, reach out to me, because that's how we learn. And I'm hoping that Ann and I will get something out that is an umbrella for both of us as well too. And that's probably going to be coming as well, because if all goes as planned, we may be running a couple of ghost tours this year. Now, of course, it's in its infancy, it's in its planning stages, but stay tuned. Let's put it that way.
That'll be amazing.
Yes. I'm so excited. We've actually got a lot of stuff in the works, and there's something that we're going to announce soon that Ron and I are doing together that I cannot wait. It's outside of the ghost tours. It's something online that will be a lot of fun. My website is anselene.com. Simple. Hopefully you can remember it. And that's also how you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And like Ron said, if there's anything that somebody feels strongly about, if you disagree with something, agree with something, whatever it is, have a completely different idea or take, we are definitely open to hearing it. I mean, I value that so much because, again, like you said, this is how we learn. This is how we grow. We have to come together with our individual puzzle pieces to be able to build that final picture.
Exactly, yes. I mean, you don't have to agree with another individual. Just don't get angry. Just sit down as adults and just have a civil conversation and throw back ideas at each other.
Yeah, that's easy for you to say, Pat. You're in Canada. Here in America, we don't do that.
No, we can be nasty up here too. Well, thank you so very much, you two. I just adore both of you, and it's been too long since you've been on the show, and we'll have to not have such gap in time to have you on again.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much.
You've been awesome.
You guys are awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to say my farewells to the audience, and then just hang tight. Maybe we can have a discussion for a few minutes afterwards. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Well, folks, that was Ann and Ron. Oh, I just love those two. So thank you to my special guests, my amazing audience, and UPRN 107.7 New Orleans and 105.3 the Gulf Coast. Remember, if you enjoyed the show, please support us by liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting. Another way to help support the show is by grabbing some swag. If you'd like to pick up your very own Paranormal Heart Podcast mug, again, for those of you watching the video, this is one of them this is what it looks like. Drop me an email at paranormalheart13@gmail.com. Until next time, much love to you all. Take care of each other.